All right, happy Monday. We are going to start off with something that is a little bit easier. We are going to be doing square roots. And just to remind you, a square root is saying that we have a square and we know the area, but we don't know the side length. So if they are asking, what is the square root of 16? They are saying we have a square. The area is 16, and what is that side? So we know, okay, the side times the side would give us 16. So we need something times something equals 16. It's a square. It has to be the same number. So that number would be 4. 4 times 4 would give you 16. So the square root of 16 is 4. Okay, so we're going to use that to help us solve quadratic equations. So let's take a look. So in all of these equations, we eventually will get to x squared equals a number, and then we need to be able to undo the x squared. So the opposite of squaring a number is taking the square root. So the opposite of squaring a number is taking the square root. So they undo each other. So x squared undoes, or is undid by taking the square root. Okay. So if I look at this first equation, it says identify the reasons for each step in the solution. So they are trying to solve for x. Okay. So they got 4x squared minus 1 equals 15. Well, I need to move this 1, so they are going to add 1 to both sides. So if I add 1 to -1, those will cancel. And if I add 1 to 15, that will give me 16. Okay, so now we're closer. So what do we do next? Good. Divide by 4 on both sides. And then 16 divided by 4 is 4, so we are left with x squared. So then this is the part where we're going to undo. So to undo x squared, we take the square root of both sides. So x squared, the square root of that is just x. And then the square root of 4 is 2. But the biggest thing that you want to see is this right here. This is called plus or minus. Say it out loud. Plus or minus. That means x can equal positive 2 or negative 2. So you have two answers. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Okay, how do I get my x by itself? Well, I have to get rid of this plus 3. So we are going to subtract 3 on both sides. Those go away. 9 minus 3 is 6. So we get 2x squared equals 6. Okay, now we divide by 2 on both sides. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then what do I do to both sides here? Good. Take the square root of both sides. So that becomes x. And this becomes, do we really know the square root of 3? Like if I were to ask you that, do you know that offhand? No, not really. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to leave it as the square root of 3. If we want to, we can put that into our calculator, yada, 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 whatever. But it's important that we know we have a positive square root of 3 and we have a negative square root of 3. Okay. So let's take a look at this first one. It just says x squared equals 9. Take the square root of both sides. This becomes x, and we get equals plus or minus 3. So what that means is if I were to put, let's see, do we have space here? It says x squared, right? Let's do 3 squared. What does that equal? Good. 9. And what if I were to put negative 3 squared? What does that equal? 9. Right. That means both of these answers will work. That's why we put plus or minus 3. Okay. X squared equals 16. What do I do to both sides? Good. Take the square root. The square root of x squared is just x. And then the square root of 16 is 4 times 4. So we will say positive 4 or negative 4. Again, this one, I'll make that a practice problem. Okay. What is the opposite of subtracting 400? Good. Adding 400. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. And that leaves me, I'm kind of running out of room. I'm going to write it right here. It leaves me with x squared equals 400. And then now I take the square root of this. So what I do to one side, I do to the other. X squared, the square root of that is just x. And then the square root of 400 is 20, plus or minus. Okay, the next one, add 49 to both sides, and we get x squared equals 49. Take the square root. We get x equals plus or minus what? 7. Good. Again, practice problem. Okay, this one, we're going to take a look at this. So backwards PEMDAS. So subtraction doesn't exist because it's inside the parentheses. Addition doesn't exist inside the parentheses. Dividing, multiplying. And so our next one is our exponents and our parentheses. So we have to undo this x squared first. Okay. So we're going to take a big square root of this side and a big square root of that side. So what is the square root of x minus 6 squared? Well, there's 2 of them, so we just take one of them out. So it becomes x minus 6 equals, and then we have to do the square root of 144. Okay, well that is plus or minus 12. Is x by itself? No, not yet. And this is kind of where it looks like absolute value. So we got a positive 12 and we have a negative 12, okay? So x minus 6 can equal positive 12 or x minus 6 can equal negative 12. And now that we've separated them, we can solve them individually, okay? So add 6 to both sides, add 6 to both sides, and then that's going to give you your 2 numbers. It might be easy for you just to be like, oh, 12 plus 6, that's 18. So that means my 2 answers are just going to be 18 and negative 18, right? Because it's plus or minus. Not exactly. So don't try to take that shortcut because that's not going to always work out. It might work out sometimes, but not enough where you should just skip the steps. So let me show you. We think, oh, this is just going to be negative 18. No, not really, because the 12 is negative, but the 6 is positive. So that actually equals negative 6. So for this one, my answer is x equals 18 and negative 6. So like for number 3, x equals 3 and negative 3. Cool. Number 4, x equals 4 and negative 4. Cool. Number 6, x equals 20 and negative 20. But don't get caught by that if you have to do more math after you do the square root. Okay. So let's take a look at one more. I'll rewrite it over here so we have more space. X plus 5 squared equals 81. Okay, So we need to get rid of this squared first. So the opposite of squaring is taking the square root. What I do to one side, I do to the other. Okay. My square root and my square, they cancel each other out. So I'm just left with x plus 5. And then we take the square root of 81, which is 9. And be careful, you don't want to forget your plus and your minus. If you only get one answer, that one answer is correct, but you didn't fully answer the question. You need to give both answers. Okay? So we got x plus 5 can either equal 9 or x plus 5 can equal negative 9. Negative 9. Okay, so we subtract 5 on both sides, and I get x equals 4. And then I subtract 5 on both sides, and then these are both negative, so I add them together. That's negative 14. So my two answers are x equals 4 and x equals negative 14. Okay, so these 3 problems are going to be your practice problems. So go ahead and try those ones out.